Hi guys, I wanted to show you a quick example of animating to audio. So I'm going to open up a new composition in After Effects. I'm going to call it Animating to Audio. It's 1920 by 1080, 24 frames per second, and 10 seconds long. We'll click OK. And then I wanted to explain over here, this is your library. It's going to have any of the elements that you've drug into After Effects. It's going to have your animation clips. It'll have, if you have multiple compositions, which is multiple animation files, those will appear here. If you have any sound, you can open up your file explorer and drag that right into the library and it'll appear below that. If you have layers from Photoshop, if you have Illustrator files, anything like that, they'll all appear right here. You can just drag and drop them in. Alright, so I drug in my audio file. You can see this audio clip right here, and I want to tell you where I got that from. So on Moodle, you can pull that. On Moodle, you can pull up the link to free resources. So you can find it in week 2. You have these free resources, and it'll just link you to the bottom of your window, resources, and it has a few links for you in here. So I have Pexels, which is some free photos and videos. You can use Coolers, which is a good color palette generator, and then Pixabay, which I wanted to show you really quick. So Pixabay is going to give you free images, illustrations, vector, anything like that. It's free and license free. But mostly what I want to show you is this music and sound effects. So if you go to music, you can say you want something upbeat, and then you get a ton of different music, different sounds. You can listen to them first. You can see how long they're going to be, and when you find one you like, you can just click download. You can do that as well with sound effects. So maybe you want a car horn. So then you have a bunch of different clips of just car horns. So let's try one. Yep. And so if that was the one you wanted, if you needed that, you can click download and you can put that audio clip into your animation. Alright, so let's get started with this. Now that I have my audio file, it's an MP3 file, I can drag that down into our layers and we have our sound. When I hit play, it'll scrub through the music for me. So that's pretty good. It came from that website I was telling you about. And I want to show you down here, if you open up these layers, you can go down to the waveform. And if you open that up, you can see a visual representation of the song that's playing. So if we play it again. Alright, so using that, you can see how so using that, you can see where these peaks and valleys are, and you can use these to animate to. So that's going to give you where those markers are going to be essentially. So I'm going to close that for now. And let's go ahead and add in a shape. We'll do an ellipse because I want to show you a couple things too. So we have our ellipse. I held shift to make it a perfectly uniform circle. I'm going to center that to the composition. I'm going to use this pan behind tool so that we can move our anchor point. I clicked off and clicked back onto the shape, and now holding Control or Command on a Mac, I can center that onto my circle. I'm going to click the selection tool, and now we have our circle. So I'm going to rename it circle. Alright, so at the moment it's on screen for the entirety of the clip. So as the music goes, it's going to sit there. Alright, so next I want to add some animation to this. So let's start with moving these. Let's move this around. We'll scale it. So we'll start with the stopwatch to set our first keyframe. So our first keyframe is this size. What I'm going to do is scale that down to start. And using my audio clip, I can see that it goes do 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 do. And I want my scale to get bigger. So we'll set that to 100 at that point. And we can just watch that for a second. Alright, so let's copy the first keyframe that had our small circle, and we'll paste that right next to it so it gets bigger. And I want to hold that, so I'm going to copy that again and paste it after that gap. And then I'm going to copy our bigger circle keyframe and paste it where we see another peak. And I want that exact same animation to repeat itself so that it gets bigger at this next peak. And I'm going to move those over just a little bit because I want that to land on that peak. So let's play those first 3 seconds now. Here I'm shortening my time frame so that it's only repeating this first 3 seconds. I'm going to click play. So maybe we want that sound to feel like it's influencing that circle. So we go do do do. And we want it to stay small. And then it feels like that sound, that audio, that tuba sound is growing. So maybe for the second one, we want it to be even bigger. And then get small again. And then maybe we want this next one to be even bigger. Let's try that. And it sounds like there's 2 peaks here. Doot, doot. So let's try to make it a little bit more stiff. So maybe instead of having that grow on the first peak, we want it to be here. And that should look pretty good. Let's try that. Okay, so the next thing I want to show you guys is using keyframe assist. So what I'm going to do is scroll to, we'll scroll over to after 3 seconds. So now it's going to start at 3 seconds just for the demonstration. There we go. Let's start where that sounds like it's tumbling. Okay, so I want to add in a new shape. Let's try it with a rectangle this time. So I'm dragging out my rectangle. I'm going to center it to the composition. And I want to move my my anchor point by holding Control. I want to make sure that is centered on my shape and click to the pointer. I'll rename that square. And let's go into these transform controls. So down here, we have that position, rotate, scale. Let's start by moving it to the left, and I want to squeeze it down a little bit, so I'm going to hold shift while I squeeze it down, and let's lock the position and the scale. So here at this first point, it's going to start our rectangle. Alright, so nothing's happening at the moment, but what I want it to do is ease over to the right. So let's move our keyframe assistant over to that first point where it sounds like do 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 do. Let's set it right there actually, and I'm just going to hold shift while I drag my square over so it locks that horizontal distance at a 90-degree angle, and it sets a new keyframe for us on position. So what's happening at the moment, it those. Okay, so now this is something that we haven't talked about yet, and this is called keyframe assistant. So I'm going to select both of my keyframes, and I want to right click and choose keyframe assistant and easy ease. And what that's going to do is ease this out of the frame, and I can show you by these little dots here. If you look very closely, they get a bit tighter, and then as they get to the center, they get a bit more wide, and then as they get to the edge, they slow down a little. And so that's a visual representation of, as it passes each of these frames, how much distance it's covering. We talked about that a little bit with animating a path, but you can see it now even better. And so instead of kind of robotically moving across, and let's copy and paste the square even, just for demonstrating. So I'm going to call this plane square, and I'll rename this one easing square. So for the plane square, you can see on my transform controls, oops, let me select it too soon. Let's try it again. Okay, so I'm going to duplicate this one. So I'll select it, copy and paste. Alright, so for square 2, that one's going to be my plane square. And what I want to do with that is just move it up so that we can see the difference. So for both of these points, I just want it above my original square. And for my eased square, here I'm going to grab both of those keyframes and choose keyframe assistant, easy ease. And so that's applying an ease in and an ease out at the same time. So now if I play my animation, or even if we just scrub through, you can see how the plane square has already covered a lot more distance, but then it's going to be a bit slower to the end. And so what's happening is all of these points are exactly even to one another, and so it's not leaving as slowly, it's not easing into the animation as slowly, and it's not easing out of the animation. So when we play it, it's going to look more robotic compared to this one. Let's play that again. And then let's look at them one at a time. So you can see it just moves at a constant rate on this top one. And if we play the bottom one, it kind of feels like there's a bit of independent motion, like it needs to run up and pull down. And then I want to show you a tool called the graph editor. So what I'm going to do is click on the position and click on this button right here called graph editor. And it's going to show me my graph of my movement. So what you can see here, and I'm going to show you the plain one to compare. So this is showing us the distance it's covering over time. So you can see it's moving from 0 to a little over 1500 pixels in a straight and constant motion over time. So here's our time, here's the distance it's covering. So our normal one, our regular square, is moving completely naturally. Compare it to our eased in and eased out square. Here, let's move that back. Here, you can see that it is covering the same amount of space more slowly as it leaves. So it takes it longer for it to reach this kind of straight peak. And then it slows itself back down here. So let's try to manipulate that a little bit. If we click on these handles, Alright, so now you can start to see how it's adjusting our time slider up here. So this is making it move faster to that point. If I move it out, it's going to slow it down. We don't want to do that though, so I want to show you the same thing but with scale now. So let's start with the scale. If I turn off the position sliders on both of these, so now it's not moving, and we'll start with our square again. We'll center it. So with the scale, we have it starting at this point that it's at. Up here, I want to make it bigger, so we'll just set it at 100%. So now what it does is linearly scale right up to the position. Now we can add easing to scale too. We can right click keyframe assistant and click easy ease. We could do ease in or ease out as well. I'll let you experiment with those. So in this case, instead of moving slowly, quickly, and then slow down again, it's scaling fast, then slow, or fast, then normal, then slowed down. And you can see that in our graph editor as well. So we have that same kind of curve. And so now what I want to show you is how you can do some overshoots or kind of manipulate this. So instead of our original, let's try bringing this bracket over and bringing this one, we'll move it straight down. So now it's going to slow and quickly move up. Let's try it in reverse. So let's bring this all the way over and bring this handle all the way up. And you can see instead it quickly becomes the size that we set it to and then kind of eases into out of that. And so if you were doing ease in or ease out, that's kind of what it will give you. So if we set it inverse like we had it, alright, and then I want to show you what it looks like to overshoot it. So instead of having it reach this point and then stop, what I want to do is drag this handle up. That should be good. And so what that's saying is my square is going to get bigger than what I set it to, and then snap back down to the size that I set it to. So let's Alright, so hopefully that's giving us a few ideas on how we can work with the graph editor. Let's make this even bigger just to demonstrate it. Alright, so now we've tried that with position and scale. And if you click this icon again, it'll take you out of the graph editor and back to your normal keyframes. And let's try it with something else. So instead of scale, and let's try it with rotation. So I'm going to move my square back to the center. And we're going to set our initial keyframe where we're at. And then let's move it over to where it toggles using our waveform to animate to. Let's set that rotation. We'll have it rotate around 3 times. So what that's saying is it's going to spin 3 times. That might be too much. Let's try something. Let's set that to 1 time. So it'll make 1 full rotation. Alright, so it's a little bit boring again because it's just moving at its constant rate. So let's try doing an ease out. All right, so we'll start on the first one. And if we set the first keyframe to ease out, and we'll set the second one to ease in, and rotation, and let's look at that now. And you can see it's starting to turn a bit slower, and then it spins a bit faster, and then it slows back down. So let's grab both of these. I'm going to press F9 on my keyboard, and it's going to set both of these to easy ease. Alright, and now if I play it, so now we have a pretty neat animation going on with that. And let's go ahead and check out the graph editor again. So here we have that same curve that we had before. Let's try doing an overshoot on this rotation. So I'm going to drag that way high, and we're even going to tighten it so that it's a little bit more dynamic. So let's watch that and see what should happen is it should rotate to where we want it to, a little bit past there, and then rotate itself back. And I like that, I just want it a little bit quicker now. And I think what I want to happen is a little bit less of a rotation. So let's set that to, we'll set it to 0, and then for the rotation, we'll set it to 160 instead of 180. Let's try 145. So I want it to go doo-doo-doo-doo, where it gets to its point, and then return. Doo-doo. I think that's looking pretty good. Alright, so let's see all together what we have. We'll turn on our circle. And the only other thing is I would like my circle to turn invisible right here. So we'll set it to 100% opacity right before that, and 100% opacity at the start. So when it reaches this point, I want it to be fully visible and then suddenly not visible. And then we have our square starting. So let's start the square's opacity at the same point. We want that to be 0%. And then suddenly turn on. Alright, let's watch that. And we can copy this just to add something in. Okay, that's pretty good. Let's do one more thing. Now, my waveform is fully visible. I can delete this easing square because I wasn't using it. And then let's add in some text on a new layer. So I want the text color to be, let's do it in kind of a blue. And I'll say 2024 animation real fully, oh man. Alright, so, let's center that. on the composition. And while we're at it, let's move that anchor point so that it's centered, holding control. And we'll hold our pointer. So right now it's on the screen constantly. And let's have it come in with the circle. So we're going to start it at transform, and let's hit the scale at that point where it's starting to grow. So let's start it at 0. That's not what I want. 0. And then as this grows and snaps back down, I want the scale to come in as well. And that's too small, so let's make it even bigger. And let's change what the text says. Instead of having it all on the same line, let's just push enter, select all of it, and center it. And I want to center that to the composition still. And I want the anchor point to also be centered. So let's do that. And let's make sure that anchor point is still centered as well. So that should be right. Let's try. There we go. So now all of it should be coming out of the same spot. And let's add some easing to our text even. So we can right click, keyframe assistant, and choose easy ease. So let's watch that together. That's a pretty good start. Alright, so with all of those tools, I'd like for you, for your animation homework, to create a title sequence for your own reel. It doesn't need to be 10 seconds long. I'd like to see a shape transformation. I'd like us to use following a path. I'd like us to use animating to audio. It needs to include text, so it says your animation reel. It's your title sequence, introducing you to your animations from this semester. And it can be something that just appears right before your reel. So let me kind of explain how that might look. I'm going to turn off my square because I don't think that is necessary at this point. I'm going to grab a few animations from other projects just for the demonstration. So maybe these are our animations. So I've just imported the video files that I exported before. And what I'm going to do is shorten the segment of animation. And I'm going to use my circles to tell me where that starts and stops. That's not what I want. There we go. So now everything should be cutting off at the same point. And then at that point, I can start to add in my other videos. So let's import my morph animation. And we can move that so that we'll shorten it and scooch it over. And we'll play 5 seconds. I think I can. And let's keep animating to the music, so when it cuts off that kind of tumbling portion, let's add in the next clip. So after that, let's do this animating on a path, and I'm going to shorten it. move it first. So there we go. That's not quite what I want. There we go. Now we should be able to see it. And I'd like that to be a bit faster, so let's go into our clip. And let's see if we can, we will extend our clip itself just so that we can see how to do that. I'm going to right click on my timeline. Oh, sorry. I'm going to right click on my composition file and set composition settings. And I'm going to extend this. So now instead of 10 seconds, let's make it 30 seconds. Oops. All right. So now you can see my timeline shrink and I have a little bit more room, so we can extend our clips a little bit. And let's play that. Alright, and then let's add in my last clip. Let's choose, yeah, I think that's the right one. And this has audio. What I want to do is set that to 0. So I don't want this to play. We're going to delete the audio portion of it. Oops. Oops, sorry, we are going to set the decibels to 0. And let's just see if that plays. It is. So let's move that over a little. I'm going to squeeze this in and then I'll hide the audio. Okay, so instead of setting it to 0, let's set it to -70. That's going to take away that sound. Alright, so now that you have your animated reel, for example, all I need is this first clip that introduces you to it. If you want to make the rest of it by importing all of the other animations that you have, you can download your projects from off of Moodle, or if you had them saved on a USB drive or on a cloud file, you can drag those in and share those too. All I need from you is this portion that says your name and your animation reel. That way you're introducing yourself. This can be up to 10 seconds, it can be less than that, maybe you don't need that. And it needs to be to sound. I want it to include a morph, and I want it to include a shape following a path for your intro. Alright, everything else, if you have any questions, just email me, and I hope you guys have a great extra long weekend. Thanks, guys.